What holds a civilization together? Roads, armies, wealth, or is it something deeper, something invisible but essential? Now, I'm not the most religious man by any means, but I do believe in God, and I try my best to strengthen that connection every day. I was once the atheist chud in, middle school and early high school, and I thought that I was sophisticated enough to live without a God per se. The point of this video is not to evangelicalize, but rather to highlight the innate importance of spirituality to the individual. Blaise Pascal once wrote, "There is a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of each man, which cannot be satisfied by any created thing, but only by God the Creator." That's true for individuals, but what if it's true for entire societies? Every culture must worship something. Every civilization must believe in something higher than itself. And when God is removed, that hunger doesn't simply vanish. It finds substitutes: politics, ideologies, technology, race, money, the list goes on. But history shows us again and again, those substitutes devour the societies that worship them. From Rome to the French Revolution, from communism to the modern West, civilizations have tried to live without God, and each time the story ends the same: a series of decadence, collapse, and then ruin. This is the story of the God-shaped hole, why secular societies always collapse, and why the West today stands on the same precipice. Humans are not just tool makers or consumers, we're meaning seekers. Without a story that explains suffering and death, life becomes unbearable. Without an anchor for morality, everything becomes negotiable. Without shared rituals, unity dissolves into tribalism. This is the God shaped hole. We need something for meaning, morality, and unity. Remove God, and those needs remain, but they get filled with substitutes: the state, ideology, race, money, or the self. Nietzsche saw this clearly when he wrote, "For such a loss, the death of God, there is not yet at all a compensation. Humanity cannot live in a vacuum. A civilization without God is like a skyscraper built on sand. It may look stable for a while, but without a foundation, it inevitably crumbles. Imagine two societies. One believes every person is made in God's image. The other believes humans are just clever animals and that morality is subjective. Which one will build hospitals and orphanages? And which one will build gladiator games and death camps? The answer is written across history." Rome at the height was, by all accounts, magnificent. Legions, aqueducts, roads stretching from Britain to Syria. Yet spiritually, Rome was empty. Its gods were tribal and simply transactional. Religion was performance and not conviction. By the late Empire, decadence had replaced discipline. Birth rates had completely collapsed. Elites withdrew into luxury, and the poor relied on bread and circuses. Rome looked powerful, but it was hollow. As historian Will Durant put it, "A great civilization is not conquered from the outside until it has destroyed itself from within." When plague struck, pagans fled, Christians stayed. They cared for the sick, fed the poor, and raised abandoned infants. Their compassion wasn't weakness, it became a survival technology. Communities with care survived better than communities with indifference. Christianity didn't kill Rome by any accounts. Rome largely was already dead inside. Christianity filled that vacuum with a faith that gave the dignity idea to the slave and hope to the dying. As historian Tom Holland writes, to live in a Western country is to live in a society still utterly saturated by Christian concepts and assumptions. Rome did fall, but Christianity endured. The God-shaped hole is filled, and history turned to a new chapter. Friedrich Nietzsche was one of the few philosophers honest about what the death of God meant. In The Gay Science, I'm not joking, he wrote, "God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers?" Nietzsche's point was not about triumph in any sense. It was terrifying. He saw the West cutting down its foundation, but trying to keep the fruit: equality, human rights, compassion. All of these made sense in a Christian world. Without God, Nietzsche argued, they'd float in midair until one day they collapse. He predicted two outcomes, and I think they're pretty spot on if you look at today: nihilism, the collapse into meaningless, or the rise of new gods. As he asked, what festivals of atonement, what sacred games shall we have to invent? In other words, humans wouldn't stop worshiping in any sense. They'd invent substitutes and worship them. But substitutes would be monstrous, and they have been. Nietzsche glimpsed into the 20th century before it happened. He saw that once God was declared dead, ideology, race, and politics would step in as the new religions. The 20th century proved Nietzsche's worst nightmare. Communism promised a secular heaven on earth. It replaced God with the party. But instead of paradise, it delivered gulags, famines, and the murder of tens of millions. Solzhenitsyn said it plainly. Men have forgotten God, and that's why this all happened, in reference to the communist revolution. Fascism replaced God with race and nation and promised glory. It delivered death camps and a world war that killed over 50 million people. And these weren't accidents. They were the logical results of trying to fill the God-shaped hole with idols too small to bear the weight. Even earlier, the French Revolution had tried the exact same experiment. Churches were desecrated, crosses tore down, and the cult of reason enthroned. But within months, the guillotine ruled Paris. The revolution that had began with cries of liberty ended with dictatorship of Napoleon. The whole had been filled with ideology, and ideology devoured its worshippers. History is clear. When societies kill God, they don't escape religion. They invent worse ones. The Enlightenment of the 17th and 18th century is often celebrated as the age when humanity finally grew up. Reason, science, and skepticism replaced faith, and Europe seemed to march into modernity, freed from the weight of religion. But peel back the layers, and the Enlightenment's moral vocabulary was still borrowed exactly from Christianity. Think of human rights. The Declaration of Independence proclaims, all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. That's obviously a Christian claim in a secular dress. Without the Creator, why should humans at all be equal? Nature is not egalitarian. It always favors the strong over the weak. Historian Larry Seidentop argued in Inventing the Individual that Western ideas of liberty and dignity are the offspring of Christian moral institutions. The Enlightenment assumed the fruit while denying the root. And what happened when Enlightenment thinkers pushed further, cutting away Christianity entirely? France gave us the answer. The revolution enthroned with reason as a goddess, but without Christian moral boundaries, reason turned into bloodshed, and the guillotine became its altar. The metaphor here is clear. The Enlightenment wanted to keep the lamp of morality burning, but threw away the oil that fed it. The light flickered for a while, but without replenishment, it dims. Imagine if the Enlightenment had been born in a culture shaped not by Christianity, but by pagan Rome. Would we speak of universal rights, dignity, and compassion? Or would reason have justified conquest, domination, and slavery? The Enlightenment's greatest mistake was to pretend that it invented values that it only inherited. The French weren't the last. Revolutionary Mexico in the 1920s outlawed Christianity. Priests were shot, churches burned, worship banned. The result? Civil war and the Cristero Rebellion, where ordinary Catholics died by the thousands rather than abandon their faith. Mao's China went even further, beyond just Christianity. During the Cultural Revolution, temples were smashed, books burned, and all religions hunted. Worship of the party replaced any worship of a god. The result was famine, mass executions, and a cultural vacuum still haunting China till this day. From Rome to France, from Russia to China, from Mexico to Mao, the pattern is identical. When God is erased, no matter which God it is, the God-shaped hole remains. And what fills it? Ideology, politics, or the party. devouring the civilization that created it. Now we arrive at today. The modern West calls itself post Christian, but the hole is still there, and we're looking at what's filling it. Consumerism has become liturgy. We shop for identity, hoping brands can give us purpose. As David Foster Wallace once said, everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. Politics has become religion. Both left and right turn parties into idols, dividing the worlds into saints and heretics. Identity itself has become a creed. Technology has become the new god. Silicon Valley preaches transhumanism and AI salvation, but the internet promises complete knowledge. Social media promises immortality through attention. But like every idol, these are fragile gods. The results? Epidemics of loneliness, mental health, suicide, birth rates completely collapsing across Europe and America, a culture drowning in wealth but starving for meaning. Religion is not a private luxury, it's a universal technology. It supplies three things secularism cannot sustain. First, meaning. A story large enough to face death without despair. Camus said life without God is absurd, and absurdity breeds collapse. Second, morality. Objective standards that bind kings and mobs alike. Dostoevsky warned that if God does not exist, everything is permitted. Without God, morality is simply an opinion, and opinions change with power. Third, unity. Shared rituals and institutions that bind strangers into communities. Augustine called this the difference between the city of man, built on pride, and the city of God, built on love. The city of man will always fall. People saw this in America. Despotism may govern without faith, but liberty cannot. Freedom requires virtue, and virtue requires faith. John Adam echoed it. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate for governance of any other nation. So what now? The modern West is trying to fill its God-shaped hole with technology. Silicon Valley offers salvation. Transhumanism, immortality, AI, omniscience is the new Tower of Babel, a digital attempt to storm heaven. But like every idol before, it will crumble. History repeats. Rome worshipped its emperors. France worshipped reason. Communism worshipped the party. Fascism worshipped race. All collapsed. Today, the West worships consumption, technology, and the self. How long until we follow the same pattern? T.S. Eliot warned, if you will not have God, you should pay your respects to Hitler or Stalin. In other words, if we refuse God, we don't escape worship. We simply end up worshiping monsters. The God-shaped hole is real. It cannot be erased, only filled. And every civilization must choose what to fill it with. Rome filled it with glory and conquest, and collapsed. The French filled it with reason, and collapsed. The communists filled it with party, fascists with race. Both collapsed in blood and rubble. The West today is filling it with technology, politics, and the self. But these idols are far too small to bear the immense weight of meaning, morality, and unity. They will fail with us, just as they have failed for every civilization before us. Pascal's words ring louder than ever. There is a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of each man, which cannot be satisfied by anything created, but only by God the Creator. That is true for individuals, it's true for nations, and it is absolutely true for civilizations. Civilizations don't die when their armies fall. They die when their gods are forgotten. The question is not whether the God-shaped hole exists. The question is, what will we fill it with? Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. I think it's like episode 11 of Principle Over Party. Let me know what you think below. Like and subscribe. I'm going to be trying to post as much as I can. I'm feeling pretty confident about this. Y'all are giving me some mojo right now. I just had a video break like 550 views. And I'm almost at 75 subs, which is pretty cool. Last week I was at like 28. So thank you so much. God bless. And I will catch y'all next week. Bye.